Good morning. I'm Charlotte Jones, co-host of the John Telford Detroit Show, coming to you every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock on WJZZ Cool TV. Also streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Dr. John Telford is a former Detroit Public Schools superintendent, a former world-class athlete, conqueror of Olympic champions, a championship track coach, poet, newspaper columnist, a longtime civil rights crusader, and author of 7 books. Creative Insubordination, What Old Men Know, The Will Robinson Story, The Poetic Prancings of Mad John, The Poet Emperor of Earth, and his explosive autobiography, A Life on the Run. Plus, another upcoming poetry book, Athletes, Activism, and Apple Boughs, a Detroit poetic epic. His books are available on Amazon.com or by calling 313-460-8272. That's 313-460-8272. Dr. Telford has been called a legend and also a lightning rod for controversy, a recipient of the City Council Spirit of Detroit Award and the Joe Louis Foundation Spirit of the Champ Award. He was named Wayne State University's Alumnus of the Year, and a Detroit track is named for him. His email is drjohntelfordedd@aol.com. That's dr.johntelfordedd@aol.com. Dr. Telford also has a show on WCHB AM 1340 that airs on Saturdays at 9:30 in the morning and Mondays at 6:30 in the evening. That's on WCHB AM 1340, Saturdays at 9:30 a.m. and Mondays at 6:30 p.m. And now, without further ado, I present to you that old native Detroiter, the one and only Dr. John Telford.
Thank you, Char J. Thank you, Char J., otherwise known as Charlotte Jones, the author of that great book series, A Ain't Always for Apple. A Ain't Always for Apple. I love this book. You know, it's an erotic adult alphabet book by Char J., who is sitting right here, co-hosting the John Telford Detroit Show today on WJZZ. And I'm going to recite this poem now that I like to recite. It's called Blue Salt. My name is Detroit. Wrote this poem. It's in the Lifelong Poetic Prancings of Mad John. My name is Detroit. I'm a blue-collar town. Blue salt melts my mid-March snow. Speedy cars and sprinters spring from me. I father fierce fighters and funky music. In a Motown moment, I can spit the blues right back in a bureaucrat's eye. Have you never seen blue salt? No complex chemistry here, only the old color of a new sky. And we've got a new sky dawning today because Dr. K. Von Kayson Turner is in the studio today. Dr. K. Von Kayson Turner, who wrote the book I Rewired My Brain. And I'm going to be interviewing Dr. K. Von Kayson Turner, who's sitting right across from me right now, after I make some of my usual announcements that I've got some notes for. On CNN this past Thursday night, June the 9th, 2022, at 8 o'clock p.m., I watched the initial broadcast of the Hearings Committee chaired by the capable Democratic Congressman Benny Thompson and by the courageous Congresswoman Liz Cheney, investigating the treasonous January the 6th, 2021 invasion of the United States Capitol building that Trump incited in a failed attempt to remain president unlawfully. 20 million Americans watched that program, even though Fox News predictably censored it. I see this January 6th committee's full truth-seeking at this hearing and its additional upcoming hearings as the penultimate, that means second from the last, almost the last, as the penultimate chance for us to save our direly endangered democracy from the fascist retrumplicans, who are now clearly and openly fascist, without even any pretense of trying to conceal their fascism, their naked fascism, their imperial fascism, their money-grubbing, capitalistic fascism. And they're not trying to conceal it any longer. And so, all of you out there who are watching and listening have got to remember, citywide, you've got to vote straight Democratic. Countywide, you've got to vote straight Democratic. Statewide, you have to vote straight Democratic. And nationwide, you've got to vote straight Democratic up and down the line. You know, forget what party you voted for in the past, because you don't have a Republican Party anymore. So if you didn't vote for the Democrats, you got to do it this time. You got to vote it this time because, you know, with no exceptions, everybody's got to vote Democratic to save our democracy. Okay, I'm getting my statements out of the way early because I want to concentrate on this interview. Lamar Lemons, you know, who was the president of the school board when I was appointed superintendent of the Detroit Public Schools, called me the other day, and I met with him and Keith Williams, who is the chair of the I think what is it, the Black Democrats or something. I can't remember what that group is. But anyway, Lamar called me, and I met with Keith and Lamar and a retired track coach, not retired, a former track coach at Central Michigan University, because they're phasing out the Central Michigan track program. And I take issue and exception with this, you know, having been a world-ranked track man, thanks to the fact that Wayne State University had a great track program, and I owe my whole life to that track program. But they're phasing out the Central Michigan track program, which also had a great track program, and it had a lot of African-American sprinters on that team. Some of them from Detroit. I remember my old rival Willie Adkins went to Central Michigan on a track scholarship, and then he became a school superintendent. He's Dr. Willie Adkins now. If he's still alive, I don't know, because he'd be about my age, about 86 years old. But Central Michigan University has phased out its historic track and field program in favor of retaining its golf program in a budget-cutting measure, thus eliminating an opportunity for predominantly African-American sprinters to attend the school on track scholarships. The golf team alumni wielded more clout. Understandably, I believe. Political clout. Lots of golf team alumni are businessmen who cut a lot of business deals on the golf course. And apparently, sprinter alumni don't play much golf.
Right.
So what we're trying to do, and you know, I was the feature speaker over at the Detroit 4 Community Advisory Council meeting a few weeks ago, and I prevailed upon this group, which is in District 4, where Chandler Park is, to support my efforts to get a 200-meter track built in the domed field house, $12.6 million domed field house that they're going to build in that park area. So, you know, call Mayor Duggan, call Councilwoman Sheffield, call Councilwoman, the Councilwoman from District 4, also, because that's Letitia Johnson, because we've got to get them accustomed to the idea that we must have a track in that dome field house for age group track, little boys and girls, for high school track, so DPSCD can compete there, you know, our high school teams, for post-high school track, you know, for Wayne State when it gets its men's track program back, which is another thing I'm working on, and maybe for Central Michigan, and they come down here and have their men's program and women's program. Wayne has a women's program, but Central Michigan doesn't have any program. So we've got to get that started up. Okay, we have got Dr. Kayvon Kayson Turner in the studio today. Dr. Kayson Turner is a psychologist in practice for over 20 years. She has a practice called Living Clarity. Living Clarity. She has studied in Europe and Africa and has traveled around the world. An author, wife, mother, and grandmother. She has a podcast on YouTube, quote, Dr. K Speaks, helping people to become the highest version of themselves. She has risen from a past full of adversity, and I've read her book, and I know what she's talking about when she says her past is full of adversity, to dedicate her life to helping others transform their lives. So, Kayvon, welcome to the John Telford Detroit Show.
Well, thank you for having me.
How did you get to this point in your life's journey that led you to being on a path of helping others?
Well, I had gone through so much trauma and drama in my own life, and I got out and I wanted to go back and help others. I've gone through being raised by a mom. My parents were divorced, and my mother was a functioning alcoholic, and she ended up being mentally and emotionally abusive. And maybe about 5 of the 7 days of the week, she would tell me I was dumb and stupid with no common sense. It would never amount to.
Wow.
You can swear on this show, by the way.
No.
Yeah, you can.
I do that on my own.
And in this book, as I rewired my brain, I want to repeat the title again. And it is just everyone needs to get this book. I need to get this book. You know, I'm having trouble with my daughter right now.
As am I.
And as is Char, having trouble with her daughter. We're both having trouble with our daughters, you know, and I need to, you know, I've read this book from cover to cover, and I'm going to read it from cover to cover again. It also has a workbook attached to it. I'm rewiring my brain is the workbook. My Journey to Freedom workbook by Dr. Kayvon Kayson Turner. And I've looked through this workbook too. I don't know if I'm going to use the workbook. I don't know, but I'm going to revisit this book again and again, the book itself, because it's got some incredibly good advice. So anyway,
so you were saying that.
you were telling us how you got to this point in your life.
Right. So my mother being mentally and emotionally abusive. As a little kid, she told me that I was dumb and stupid with no common sense, would never amount to. She said she wished she never had
You
me.
can say shit. It's all right
At
to say
one
that.
point
We
in
can say it on
time,
this show.
at one point in time, it got so bad to where she even pulled a gun on me,
Wow.
Ooh.
a shotgun. She was drinking and she pulled a gun on me and she told me that I brought you here and I'll take you out.
Are you an only child?
No, I have an older sister.
Okay.
Yep. So at that time when she pulled the gun, she told me to get out of the house, and so I was homeless for a while.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I had a 1-year-old son at the time because I was pregnant at 15 and had my first son at 16. And I have a whole history of sexual abuse from the age of maybe 4 or 5 all the way into my young adulthood.
Good
So I went
Lord.
through a whole lot of trauma and drama. In addition to that, I ended up marrying my son's father because I was taught that you're supposed to have all of your kids by the same man.
Hmm.
So that's what I was taught. And even though he was mentally, emotionally, physically, and sexually abusive before we even got married, because it was programmed into my brain. My brain was wired to have all the kids by the same man. I married him anyway, even though he beat me up the day before the wedding.
Yeah.
It got to the point to where he even held a gun on me. He held a sawed-off shotgun at my head, saying, hee, ha, ha, you don't know if it has bullets in it.
And this is all in that book. I mean, she doesn't pull any punches.
That
She
book
tells-
should be bigger. If you
Well, it is a.
it's not that big.
Well, this book is
Yep, it's got some snapshots.
it's 143 pages, and you know I don't pull any punches in this book either. This is A Life on the Run, which is my autobiography, which I have signed over to Dr. Kayvon because she hadn't signed a book to me. Did you sign it? Did you
I
sign it?
gave it to you. I got to sign it, though.
Yeah, you got to sign it. That's
Yes.
right. But anyway, this book is equally R-rated. You know, her book is somewhat R-rated just because of the experiences that she describes in the book, as also is this other book.
Well, that's X-rated.
No, yeah, well, I guess you could say mine's X-rated in too, you know. But yeah, this book is definitely X-rated,
X-rated.
particularly when you look at the pictures. You know, and it's a great artist in the pictures inside it. From Venezuela, and her name was
Daniela Vesquez.
Daniela Vesquez. I always like to give that lady credit because she's so good.
You can find her on Fiverr. That's where I found her.
Wow.
But anyway, we got a commercial going.
Okay, I'm sorry. We're having such a good time.
Yeah.
You're watching WJZZ Cool TV, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like us, follow us, share us, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. So
Yes.
you were saying abusive marriage now.
Yes. My ex-husband was very abusive. He pulled a gun on me after I was sitting on the commode nursing a black eye and a fat lip, and then he came and pulled the shotgun on me. And at that time, I was so depressed. I was feeling hopeless because I used to call my mother and my sister after the beatings, crying and screaming, he did it. And because I didn't leave, they said, don't call because we can't take this. It's too painful. It's too hard for us. So then I couldn't call them anymore. And then this was back in the day, 40 years ago, 40-something years ago, where there were no cell phones, and when I would get ready to call the police, he would snatch the phone out of the wall. So then
You
I
know,
couldn't call the police.
your ex-husband needed a good old Detroit down and home ass whipping. I can tell you a story about what we did to the husband of one of my cousins, you know, who beat her. But that's what he needed, you know. And I'm not a violent man, but that's what he needed.
I've heard that before. God had a different twist on it for me, though, because, and I'm just jumping ahead, and I'll just say this real quick since this conversation came up. When I finally left the situation and I was telling God, I just want to have peace. I want peace in my life. God let me know, all right, you can't have peace focusing on your ex-husband from the perspective that you're focusing on him from. Because after I had left him with 3 kids by now, right,
Wow.
and after another getting ready to kill myself, 8 months pregnant, 6 to 8 months pregnant, and he jumped on me, and I got up off the floor and ran. I was going to jump in the Detroit River, but didn't live anywhere close to it like I do now, so I didn't make it. I called a friend, collect on the phone, and she talked me off the ledge, and then I ended up getting out. But God told me, because I said I wanted to be on the path of peace after I got away from him, all of that trauma and drama. God said that here's your fork in the road. If you want to have peace, you cannot focus on your husband from the perspective that you're focusing on him. Because I was focusing on, he was so wrong to do me that way. Why did he do that? He should have never did that. And that's so horrible. I didn't deserve that. And right? And God said that kind of mindset is not going to create peace. If you want peace, then you got to look at this thing from a different perspective.
Amen.
Yeah. So God taught me how to look at the perspective from, he showed up in the planet as a innocent baby, just like I did, just like we all did, and his brain got wired by his circumstances, his environment, just like mine did, and he was operating from his programs, as I talk about in the book. And so God called on me to forgive, and forgiveness is not something that you do, it's what happens when you understand. When you have your aha moment of understanding, because I learned about his childhood, I knew it. And then I could see the 1 + 1 equaling 2 and how he turned out to be the way that he was. And since we all operate on automatic pilot 95% of the time from our programs, that is why he was doing what he was doing. So even though I had my aha moment, it was still time for me to leave. And as a result of me healing and having an overstanding of that situation, basically reinterpreting my past with him, which I talk about in my book, putting a different meaning on that relationship, it gave me a sense of peace. And now he and I have a good relationship. We've got 3 kids together. We've got grandkids together. We've gone to birthday parties for the grandkids together and all of that, and sit and talk. And nobody would ever know who's watching us, all the things that happened to us in our past.
Tell your husband I still believe he needed an ass whipping. But tell us tell us how these experiences impacted your life.
So I ended up having low self-esteem, poor self-confidence. I didn't believe in myself because my mother was telling me I was dumb and stupid with no common sense. So if if I knew that I was supposed to go right, because everything points to going right, I would go left because am I really supposed to go right? Because I didn't trust myself. I'm dumb and stupid with no common sense.
Let me ask you,
Right.
did your husband say those things to you as well? The ex-husband?
No, you know what? He didn't say those things. He had some other
Okay.
mean things to say. And one of them, it was kind of funny. It wasn't funny then, but when I had left him, and then he would call the house because we still had the co-parent, and he would strike up a conversation with me about the weather and being nice, and then I would open up and tell him I'm healing, I'm working on myself, I'm doing self-help books now, I'm listening to subliminal tapes and all of that. One time he got mad at me, and he called me a subliminal motherfucker. And I was hurt by it then because it's like I opened up and I confided in you, you know, and then you came and did this. But then I told my friends and they said, that's all right. You working on yourself and you keep moving ahead and all of that. So they were the wind beneath my wings when I was learning how to fly.
Okay, because I say, you know, sometimes you get it from here and then you go into a relationship where you get the same thing. It was similar
Yep.
to what you got it with your mother, but it was different. And same
I was,
thing.
Yep,
but
still being devalued. One thing I do want to say too, a big point about what my past left me with, before I rewired my brain, it left me with a mindset, a belief system that I was a victim. And then I wasn't valuing myself and I wasn't respecting myself. But then I've come to value myself and respect myself and realize that in my adult life, or even in a lot of other situations I went through as an older child, teenager, I was putting myself in certain situations. I was making certain choices. And so now I know that I am a co-creator in my life's experience because we all have free will and we all have choices. And that was something that freed me from my mental and emotional bondage. Just recognizing I have free will and a lot of the choices that I made put me in certain situations that I was in.
How did you get from such a dark place to where you are now? You of having hope, dreaming, and becoming a doctor and a world traveler. I mean, how did you get from almost A to L? not A to B, but you know, A to Z. Even.
God.
Okay.
Yeah, it was my spiritual journey. The one friend, Renee, rest her soul, she passed on. But when I left out of the house when I was about 6 to 8 months pregnant, and he beat me up, and I was running out of the house, and I ran to call her on the phone, and she talked me off the ledge and told me to go back home. When I finally did get out, I was talking to her because he told me he was going to drive by the house and shoot it up. So I used to sit on the floor with my kids and play with them.
Did you hear that, listeners and watchers? He was going to drive by the house and shoot it up.
with their kids in the house.
Yeah.
All three of them. So I would sit on the floor with the kids and play. And my friend Renee said, well, you just got to have faith that God is going to protect you. And then I was like, okay, so how do you do that? She said, well, you know, God will protect you and, you know, just believe. And I was like, well, how am I supposed to just do that? Because I wasn't taught about that. As a matter of fact, when I was growing up, I went to some churches, and it seemed like they talked about Satan so much that you would think he was going to come down the aisle at any minute. Or the minister would talk about how God will get you if you do bad, right? And so I didn't want any connection with that when I was little, so I didn't learn about faith. But Renee, she stayed on the phone with me till about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning telling me about all of her stories about how she was in a situation and God showed up for her as she prayed and just believed and waited, and then it came through. God came through. And so it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. She said, all right, I got to go to work in a little bit. And she said, I done told you all the stories I can. And then she told me, she said, so, because I told her, I said, I still don't have faith. I hear you, and I'm really trying to get to faith listening to your stories, but I'm not getting it. She said, ask God to give you faith. Pray to God. And I said, well, how am I supposed to do that? She said, just like you talking to me. Just open up your heart. You don't have to do any Hail Marys, be on the floor with your hands clapped. You don't have to do any of that. Just talk to God with an open heart. And that's what I did after I got off the phone. I was like, all right, God, it's me. Renee told me to pray to you.
I have always been of the school that says God helps those who help themselves. You know, maybe that's an agnostic view. I don't know, but I've always been of that opinion. But let me ask you this. We want you to talk about your spiritual journey, but before you do that, you know, share with us your poem, I Feel, that speaks to how you felt during your depression. like you to share that poem with us, if you
Okay.
would.
Yes. So the poem, I feel I wrote that when I was still married to my ex-husband and getting all of my beatings and just in a really, really dark place, in a depression. And so the poem came to me and I wrote it down, and it goes like this. I feel no hope and not much pain, just numb existence. Is this not sane? To feel is good, to feel is bad. To feel is inevitable, is happy, is sad. Take a look inside, consider what's real. It's not a hoax. You feel what you feel.
I love that poem.
Thank
See,
you.
you're a poet here. So when are you going to do your book of poetry?
I have one already, and I'm going to be working on another one. And I'll probably be intermingling my poetry in all the self-help books that I'm going to write, because they all have a lot of great meaning.
Speaking about poems, since you did a poem,
Okay.
I just wrote this poem a couple of weeks ago. So it's not going to go in my new poetry book, which is already, being published. My new poetry book, Athletes, Activism, and Apple Boughs, Detroit Poetic Epic. That's going to be my next poetry book. Little PG rating in there too. But, this poem I call The Values of Verse, and I'm so in love with my own poem
Okay.
that I'm gonna read it again because I just wrote it. I wish I'd put this in the book. Verse comes to us by pen or voice. We thus can always take our choice. Let me be also sure to mention that verse will gain us righteous vengeance. You can think about that in your life, I think this guy needs a little vengeance still. Via deft poetic arts that can topple oligarchs. Verse will clearly, plainly lay out what we poets dare to say out, with mule like gentle lambs, no more, but rather with a fearsome roar, as from some cacophonic core of lions. And we have a lioness sitting here today, and she has shown that she is a lioness, and we have another lioness sitting right over there,
All right.
and I'm sure that she shows that she is one too.
Sometimes I have to. Yeah. I think we all do. We all have to get in there sometimes. And listening to you, your story, it does speak that you fought and you came back from someplace deep, like it says, a dark journey. That's where you came from. And I feel that from just talking to you in this, we just met, this little brief moment, I get that feeling from you. So.
Amen. Amen. You got a question you want to ask?
No, not right now. I'm just
Okay,
enjoying
well, I
her
got
story.
one. I got one. Okay. I got. Tell us how. Oh, you know what? You had another poem. Life is a treasure that speaks to your your spiritual journey. Let's hear that poem. Can you do that one?
Yep. So it's real quick, and I don't know what you call it because it's like, I think it's about 4 lines.
Okay.
Haiku, maybe?
All right. That's good.
Yep. But it
Four
goes,
lines is good.
life is a treasure, much beauty it holds. Through self-awareness, the beauty unfolds.
All right. Okay. Is that in the book?
I don't know if that one is in the book.
Okay. See, I got some that aren't in the book.
Okay,
I just wrote
John.
another one that I call one for. You got one?
No,
Oh, okay.
I will bring
I keep pushing her to do poetry. This one's a new one that I call one ode for educators. Ode for educators, and it's a one-line poem.
Okay.
Some of my poems are very, very short. This one's about as short as they come. Ode for educators. Tell the truth to our youth.
You're watching WJZZ Cool TV, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like us, follow us, share us, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world.
And we are interviewing Dr. Kayvon Kason Turner, who is a prominent and brilliant psychologist who has written I Rewired My Brain, My Journey to Freedom. I Rewired My Brain, My Journey to Freedom. I have read every word of this book, and I'm going to read it again because it helped me, 86-year-old John Telford, who thinks he doesn't need any help from anybody anymore. Well, it helped me, and I recommend it to anyone who has any kind of a personal problem, an emotional problem, a spiritual problem, an economic problem. Get this book and read it. How can my listeners and watchers get this book, Kayvon?
So right now, the book and the workbook are available on Amazon.
Tell them again.
The book and the workbook are available on Amazon. And my publisher, we're working on getting it on other venues. Right
Okay.
now on Amazon.
Okay, so what do? They go to the book division of Amazon?
Yep, they can type in I Rewired My Brain, My Journey to Freedom.
Okay.
And then the book and the workbook should show up together. And the book is also on Kindle.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
You got the book on Kindle. Okay, that's good. Okay, tell us how your spiritual journey unfolded. How did it all unfold?
Okay, so
For you.
when I was praying to God, saying, okay, Renee told me to talk to you, God. You know, it's me. I need some faith, and I don't know what that is. Please help me to have faith. And so what happened as a result of that was, so by this time, I'm separated from my ex-husband and raising my 3 kids on my own. And my son, my oldest son, he had to go to school. School was starting up, and I didn't have any money for school clothes. So I started praying, oh, God, I need some school clothes for my son, school supplies, because
Right.
don't have money coming in. And I ended up being on welfare at that time. So as a result of me praying, this was interesting. Montgomery
You hear
Ward's.
that? This lady came off welfare to accomplish what she has accomplished. I
I'm
mean,
a doctor.
yeah, a PhD in psychology. From the welfare rolls to a PhD in psychology. And I'm sorry I interrupted you.
That's okay. So I was praying for school clothes for my son, and then Montgomery Ward coupons was coming in the mail, $25 coupons where you don't have to buy anything. Just take the coupon in and get it. I got like 3 of those.
Oh, wow.
And that was enough to get my son's school clothes. And it was interesting when it came. It was like, oh, yay, got a Montgomery Ward. And then it came again. I was like, hold on, wait a minute. And then it started getting eerie because I knew I had been praying for this. And then it started coming. And then I forgot it wasn't CVS back in the day, but whatever the 5 and dime store was, they started sending me things saying you get 10 spiral notebooks for $1, 10 packs of pencils for $1. And all of this stuff started coming in. And I said, wow, okay, this is really real. So then my best friend at the time, she wanted to go to this church because these people came to her. She lived in the Smith Home Projects, and she was on welfare also.
Where was this?
In Detroit, because I'm born
Okay.
and raised in Detroit,
Okay.
West Side. So
Yeah.
the people came to her, and they wanted her to come to the church, and she didn't want to go by herself, so I went to the church with her, and it was an apostolic church. And so I started going to the church, and then at the time, me and my friend, we were like smoking our little weed, nothing like they're smoking right now, but it was
Right.
like the old school weed from 40 years ago with the seeds that pop all over your clothes and get the holes in it. And then we were drinking these little golden champagnes. I don't know how much percentage of alcohol, but it wasn't much. And so because we were still doing that, my friend was feeling guilty about going to the church, but I was liking what I was learning about God. And so she stopped going, and I continued to go because I liked what I was receiving. And then eventually I stopped smoking and drinking my little golden champagnes and, going to this church because it was apostolic. So apostolic, that lady said, okay, the minister talked about no drinking and, of course, no smoking. Women's supposed to wear dresses. Ain't supposed to wear dresses with pantyhose on. I don't care if it's going to be like 100 degrees like it's going to be today. Still supposed to have pantyhose on. And she took it to the hilt saying you're not supposed to have relaxer in your hair. You shouldn't wear makeup. You shouldn't wear jewelry. And then she was saying that all of that stuff was in the Bible. And when she was reading it, I was looking and saying, well, I don't
was
see
not
that.
in the Bible. What about relaxer in your hair? I don't
see,
any
she's-
Bible I ever saw didn't have that in it.
See, so when she was telling me that, I was saying, well, I don't see what you see, so I'm not going to follow that right now. But everybody else was following it in the church, right? And I'm a fashion designer, and fashion designer before I became a doctor, so I was making all of my clothes. I had found this fabric store where I can get the fabric for $1 a yard, and it didn't take much for me to make a dress. Give me a yard, and then I could make a dress. So then I was wearing different clothes, and she used to preach and talk about how y'all wearing all of these clothes, and you only need one dress, one on your back and one hanging up at home to dry, and you get the rest of the money to the church. And I was like, I don't see that in the Bible. So anyway, as a result of me going to the Bible studies and everything and not seeing what she was saying, and I would be raising my hand, and other people started saying, well, what about what it came out and saying? Where is that and everything, right?
You started creating a bunch of rebels, is what you were doing.
Yep, sort of, kind of.
So they asked you to leave. No.
Yeah. Oh, well, wait till I get to that part. Yeah. Yep. He knows the story. Okay, but let me backtrack a little bit, because some awesome stuff, even though I ended up leaving, awesome stuff happened in that church for me. Because it was a sister church that we would visit, or they would visit us once a month, I think. And then they would lay hands and do all of this. So at one of those church functions on a Wednesday or whatever day it was during the week, it was this minister up there, and she was telling people, come on up there, she'll lay the hands on them. And so people were going up there, and she laid the hands, and they were jumping around and doing all of that. I didn't believe in any of that, the Holy Ghost thing that they were doing. I was like, nope, I don't believe that. And so I'm not going up there, but everybody else was just going up there. But then there was this one lady that went up there, and she had a red dress on, and when she went up in the air, her body jerked abnormally. And I was like, ooh, what was that, right? And then so everybody had went up who wanted to go up because they were volunteering. And then that lady looked at me, and she told me, you come up here.
Uh-oh.
I know, right? So I went up there, and then she said, walk down the aisle. And so I walked down the aisle, and it's like pews on both sides, and we got down, I walked all the way down to the end. And then she said, now run back. And I was embarrassed, right? But I'm like, all right, I'll bite. So I ran down the aisle, running back, and everybody is looking at me. And then I stood in front of her, and she put her hands on me, and she started doing whatever she was doing. And my arm was down like this, but my hand started doing like this. And I started looking down like, oh, shoot, something is happening.
Whoa.
Yeah, then all of a sudden my body started jerking around and doing all of this stuff, and it was going and going and going, and then bam, I hit the floor. And I mean, I hit the floor, I didn't even hurt myself. And I did not lay down gracefully because I had on the dress. I don't even know how I got down there without hurting myself. And when I was down on the floor, I was laying there. And then I felt something trying to come up, some energy that felt like it was in my stomach pushing up this way. So I started clenching down, and the ladies with the white on and the fans was like, let the Lord do his thing, sister, let the Lord do his thing. So they fanned me, just relax. And then I started relaxing, and then all of this I started speaking in tongues. And let me say,
you started speaking in tongues. But how, as a psychologist, do you interpret this experience?
How did I interpret it?
How do you interpret it now? Yeah.
As how is more to life than what we know, that we realize, because I've had other experiences with premonitions when I started going to that church, remote viewing, where I consciously put myself in a trance and identified something that was in a whole nother country and drew the picture of it, and it was right there. So it's more to us than meets the eye. And I do want to say, it's some powers that be that know that, and they use all of those kind of abilities, but they try to keep us distracted with other things so that we don't get in touch with the truth of who we are, which are spiritual beings having a human experience.
That's right. And I'm going to share an experience that I don't think I ever shared on the air. But when I was married to my second wife, Gina Telford, I told her that I had a dream last night that kind of confused me. I dreamt that a ferry boat went down in a Canadian lake with a lot of people drowned. And that, it was really, I didn't like that dream. I told her about it. Next day, a ferry boat went down in Lake Champlain. Everybody drowned. Now, I don't have any connection to Canada, other than the fact that I was a Canadian 400-meter champion in 1960, because you could go. I went over to London, Ontario, and won that race. But I don't have any other connections to anyone in Canada. And I don't know why or how that happened, but it happened. And it was too specific to be a coincidence.
Absolutely.
Now, we have to be careful how we describe some experiences like this, because people are going to think we're nuts.
Right.
And before I forget it too, we were talking about clothing. I got to say this. Miss Virginia Starkey, fondly known simply as V, The proprietress of V's Boutique offers a wide range of fine clothing and accessories for ladies. You can find all sizes of women's fine apparel in V's one-stop excellent customer service at V's Boutique that you can't find anywhere else in Detroit anymore. V's Boutique is at 16423 East Warren Avenue. The phone number is 313-662-6622. And again, it's at 16423 East Warren Avenue, right around the corner from the Alger Theater and right around the corner from one of the few libraries that is still open. But my friend Russ Ballant, who's on the library board, is telling me that they're going to open several more. And that's a good thing because we've got a real literacy problem in this city, which I've been trying to work on and which my co-host, Char J, is working on as well.
Right.
So I had to get that commercial in, Kayvon.
All right. Oh, you know what? Charles H. spoke about how they didn't want me in the church anymore. Let me tell that story briefly.
Go ahead.
So, like I said, I got a lot of good experiences from the church because, I got in touch with myself as a spiritual being because I was actually doing some praying and meditating. She was saying what she was saying, and it got me interested in God enough to start studying the Bible and doing my own. And so I learned a lot and gained a lot. So, as a result of me questioning her too much, one day I had a vision that she collared me, grabbed me, and then I looked into her eyes and then I saw darkness, and then I knew that it was time to go. And that vision scared me so much that I was real nervous about going to church that morning. And I took my time getting my little ones ready because I had 3 at the time. The youngest one, he was still potty training, so he was 1.5 maybe. And then my daughter was 3, and then my oldest son was 10. And let me say this, me and my son were both brown belts, on our way to being black belts, studying Tung Sudo, because I had the bright idea that I could get back with my ex-husband, and I would be able to protect myself.
Yeah.
I was in my 20s back then. I'm almost 60 now. I was in my 20s, so that was my idea. And he told me one day, if you try that karate shit on me, I will shoot you. And I knew how to take a gun, or I knew what to do, but it's like, no, I don't even want to go through that.
Not at home anyway.
Oh, good Lord.
Right.
Man.
Okay, so.
I go back to my old premise. He still needs an old-fashioned Detroit ass whipping. Now, I don't know if I could give it to him anymore because I'm 86. It was a day when I could have, though.
Oh, but let me finish. Okay, so get to the church story. The church story, wrapping it up. So that one day I was scared to go to church because of what happened. And then so I told the karate story for a reason. So then we went to church and we got there late. And it was like a storefront church where you come in the door, hang your coats up here, and then you go and then sit down and she's up in the front. So then we got in late. I took off my coat. I had on a long maxi all the way to my ankle, leather coat, telling you that for a reason too. Hung up my coat, my kids' coats, and we went and sat down. So then my youngest son, time we got there, started saying, I got to go to the bathroom, I said, okay, wait a minute. Then I got up to take him. You're supposed to raise up your finger and duck your head down, and that's the protocol to go back behind her. She told me, sit down.
You got to be kidding me, man. And I said that's in this book, too.
Yep.
That incident's in the book.
Yep. So then, anyway, she ended up, another lady in the church was able to take my son to the bathroom. And then when he got back, the minister was talking about me. Yeah, y'all wearing perms in your hair and wearing makeup and wearing jewelry and doing this and doing that. Everybody knew she was talking about me because I was the only one that was doing that. And I was like, all right, I'll just deal with it. But she started talking about my kids. I forgot what she said, but it was so negative. I'm like, no, I'm not taking this. You can't talk about my kids. So I said, come on, y'all, we getting ready to go. Got my kids up. We went to the back of the church. I put on my coat first. And then next thing I know, the minister is coming down the aisle walking, right? Talking about me and talking. And then she came up to me. She grabbed me in the collar, just like in my vision. And then she said, God told me I wasn't going to have a lot of people in my church. Get out of my church right now. Because I had the vision, I knew not to hit her because I was in karate. Another lady, I didn't know. She hit me saying, don't you talk to the pastor like that. So when she did that, my fist went right in the lady's face. And then it was on and popping. The church attacked me. And my
Wow.
son, 10 years old, he helped me. We were up against the pews fighting, and he was helping me. The minister's son was about 6'6". He picked me up in a full Nelson. I know how to get out of a full Nelson, but not with a long maxi coat on. I was trying to do all of my stuff, and my feet was getting hung up. So he picked me up, threw me out into the middle of the sidewalk. My shoe went into the middle of Grand River, and they slammed the door, put my oldest son out, and had my little ones in there.
Can you believe that story? You know, that's there are some church people
At church.
at church who are not godly. They are not. And I discovered that very early. That's why I quit the church. You know, when I was a little boy, I was a choir boy over at Bethel Evangelical and Reformed Church over on West Grand Boulevard, and I was so pious. But that's when I was a little boy. And I can remember when I got, and I'm going to tell this story. I can remember when I got, when I moved to the east side to live with my father after I got kicked out of high school. You know, I got back in another high school. But my mother came back to my father. She had left him for drinking and gambling. And I went to, she got me in this church. She insisted I had to go to church, that I couldn't do boxing anymore. I couldn't work in the factory anymore. I had to get in a school because my father had me in the factory with him. I was 16 years old, and in this church, I was working my way through half the girls there, so that part was good, you know. But the bad part was there was the mother of one of the girls. Actually, the girl was in my mother's Sunday school class. My mother was teaching Sunday school, and the mother was talking about niggers in this church, and I was saying to myself, something's wrong with this. And I told my mother, you know, I went home and I said, Mrs., I'm not going to say her name, but I remember her name, Mrs. So-and-so said this word. And my mother said, well, you need to reform them. You need to teach them. But I said to myself, you know, my way of reformation is more like my father's, you know, fast left hook to the... So I never went back to church, and that was at the age of 16, and my mother was very upset. And I was a junior at Denby High School then, but I never went back into a church. And now I only go for weddings and funerals, and that's just the way it is.
Whoever that lady was, you probably could say her name, because she probably not here no more.
No, she probably not, but her daughter is.
Oh, okay.
I think. I'm not even sure of that, because her daughter would be about 85 years old.
Oh, wow. You're watching WJZZ Cool TV, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world.
Thank you, Char J., author of A Ain't Always for Apple. A Ain't Always for Apple, an erotic adult alphabet book by Char J. Very erotic. And then the pictures are even more so.
I learned all that stuff on the internet, though. I didn't know anything about it.
And we are interviewing Dr. Devon. Dr. Devon is with us today. Dr. K. Devon Kayson Turner, who has written I Rewired My Brain, My Journey to Freedom. My Journey to Freedom. So Dr. Kayvon, tell us about your book and workbook. Tell us about the book and workbook, and also tell us again how people can get them.
They can purchase the book and the workbook on Amazon. So in the book has two parts. The first part of the book is my backstory, and it's, you know, some of the stories that I told you today. Well, all the stories I told today are in the book, but of course I was able to elaborate more here. But my backstory, all the trauma and drama that I went through, how it programmed my brain to believe a certain thing, that's all in the first part, and then how I got out of it. Now, the second part of the book teaches people about the brain, and it's not wordy and scientific, but bottom line is we're all wired for habit. About 95% of the time, we're all walking around on automatic pilot, and 5% of the time, we're operating from conscious thought. And a lot of us have habits that are taking us places that we don't want to go in life. Now, where did we get those habits? How did our brain get programmed that way? How did it get wired that way? Whatever your parents or your caregivers taught you, whatever the belief systems were that they taught you to think or believe, whatever the behaviors were that they taught you. And then some of the things you just learned just from watching them, because remember the old school stuff, do as I say, not as I do, but you end up doing as they do because they're exposing you to it. Mm-hmm. Other things in life that you get exposed to repetitiously on a regular basis, even the media, social media, all of that programs your brain. Mm-hmm. When you keep hearing something over and over and over and over again, it has a way of getting in there. And in the brain, there are some nerves called neurons. And they fire together And then once they fire together, they wire together. And when they wire together, that's when you get your habit. So they fire together when you're doing the same things over and over again or thinking in the same kind of ways over and over again. So my book teaches people that we're all programmed for habit. And then I teach people how to rewire your brain, because by the time you're reading a book like this, you're already wired, you're already programmed, and some of your programs are taking you places you don't want to go. We had spoken earlier before we got on the air about triggers. I talk about triggers in here too, and what to do with the triggers, how to identify what your triggers are, because the triggers are coming from some unresolved issue or some issue that you have that'll take you to a state of distress, whether it's anxiety, anger, fear, worry, or doubt. And once you are in that state, then you can't even think in the way that you can normally think. So my book teaches you how to, it talks about all of that. I talk about meditation and visualizations and affirmations, because that was a big part of what I did to rewire my brain, and I teach my patients to rewire their brain with that as well. Like we talked about, I went from welfare to being a doctor. When I was on welfare, I did my vision board. We called them image pages back in the day, but I did it on traveling all over the world, right? And I focused on all the time. I also did affirmations. And then as a result of that, I ended up studying in Africa. I won a scholarship to study in Africa, in Benin in West Africa. And then I did a London and Paris study trip. I have gone to Italy. I've gone to Greece. I've gone to China 3 times. I've gone to Hong Kong. I've gone to Nice, Monaco, Monte Carlo, Thailand. I've been all over the world, starting just with that mindset of, I'm going to do this.
So we've got a couple of minutes.
Okay.
What do you want people to take from this? Tell us how they can get in touch with you. You know.
Okay, so I want people to take from this that it's important that our brain is programmed, wired the way we want it to be wired, so that it can take us where we want to go in life. So in the book, I talk about that. And then in the workbook, there are step-by-step strategies. The workbook is a template to teach you how to rewire your brain in a step-by-step way. You can go on the internet and find different things here and there, but I found out that when you're learning from the internet, you might end up on chapter 34, then ricochet back to a chapter 2 and a chapter 5, and then you all discombobulated. So the workbook lines it up just perfectly in a systematic way so that you can rewire your brain so that you can become the highest version of yourself. And like you said earlier, I have YouTube channel called Dr. K Speaks, so you can go on Dr. K Speaks so that you can be looking at all the videos that I've already uploaded, and I tend to upload on Sundays so that you can learn about all the different strategies that can help you to become the highest version of yourself.
And I met this lady she's the next door neighbor to Reggie Bradford, one of my great quarter milers who came out of Pershing High School, and he's having a barbecue on Father's Day. And I'm hoping that my kids will show up, and I guess some of my old trackmen. I'm really looking forward to that. And I presume you're going to be at that barbecue too, right? Because it's right next door, so that'll be cool. Okay, tell us one last time how people can get in touch with you and get your book.
Okay, so the book is on Amazon, and then as far as getting in touch with me, Dr. K Speaks 100@gmail.com for speaking engagements. Dr. K Speaks 100@gmail.com.
All right, that's going to do it for us. It was nice meeting you. It was nice having you. I look forward to talking with you more. I really do.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the John Telford Detroit Show with Dr. John Telford and co-host Charlotte Jones on WJZZ Detroit Internet Television, coming to you live every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. Also streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Contact Dr. Telford at 313-460-8272. That's 313